the Slux Gallery. Thank you for hosting us the other evening, and thank you for having us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited for this conversation.
Yeah. And I know a little bit of your background, but can you tell people who are listening a little bit about how you came to New York and a bit of your history prior?
So unlike my accent, which could be misleading, I've been in New York for 20 years, and I moved to New York for work, actually. I used to work in the beauty and later on in the fashion industry. And so that's how I came to New York first. And now I own a gallery, which is called the Selex Gallery, which focuses on the work of fashion and cultural photographers. Really with this mission to protect their archives. That's how it started. I had the chance to work with many of these photographers and realize, the process, and you're a fashion photographer as well, so like how much thought there is before the shoot preparation. Then the day of the shoot, there's so many people involved, and then post-production sometimes. And yet, those images are not necessary. Most of them are sleeping in archives, and so he felt that it was important to protect those archives, work with those archives before they disappear. That's how it started.
No, that's great. And it's a little bit like we talk about in the book. You take your skills, you take the things you value, and then you reposition them sometimes in a completely different way.
Yeah.
You worked in fashion for quite a while, so.
Yes. And I had always, I started in marketing, and what I loved about marketing is that, for the story, I had a chance to either be hired in finance or in marketing. And I was not sure what I wanted to do, and I decided to go to marketing because you work with people who know more than you on specific areas. So with the designer, with the labs who are going to create the formulation in beauty, with the packaging team, with the factory, with the finance team, with the sales team. And you kind of like have that vision of where you want to go strategically, and you drive those experts around you, you learn from them, and you kind of all go into the same direction. And that's always what I thought was so fulfilling about marketing. And so therefore I've learned very early on, and most probably even appreciated, working with experts which are more knowledgeable than me. And so in the world of art and photography, I don't pretend that I'm a good photographer. I actually know I'm not, but I appreciate the work. And I I see my role as a decoder, almost understanding even some things that sometimes the artists themselves didn't process, because they do things very intuitively, and kind of like juxtaposing with what's going on in the world, what was going on in the world at that time, what happened to the personal life of the photographer, and therefore kind of connecting the dots to understand what's the message of the artist. And so that's most probably where my two worlds connect, and how I used some of my marketing skills or affinities towards photographers.
What were some of the challenges you faced when you decided to move from fashion to a gallery? I mean, that's not an easy transition, and fashion, for people who don't know, fashion is not well represented in the gallery world.
No.
You're a bit of a unicorn.
It's so there's a few things. So from the unicorn point of view, obviously I'm very French still, and photography, as you know, is completely part of our heritage. French like to say that photography was invented in France. There's a lot of engagement from the institutions toward photography, and there's a lot of acceptation and adoption of photography from regular people, both going to museums, obviously Paris Photo is the biggest photography fair in the world, so attending the fairs and the exhibitions, but also owning photography for themselves in their home. So for me, it's part of my heritage, and when I came to the US, I identified that actually that was not part of the American heritage, and it felt like a gap. So that's one thing that I'm trying to help do, is to educate around photography, so that we can help and participate together. I mean, you do the same, obviously, Thomas, but help bridge that gap, bring the education, bring some expertise, and help people understand photography as a serious art medium. So that's from the unicorn or uniqueness. I'm not the only one, obviously, and there's amazing galleries who represent photography, and you can see even in the museums in the US how much more adoption there is, particularly in the recent years. It's kind of fascinating to witness and very exciting. And so from a background point of view, you are asking me what was difficult. I think, we spoke about it spontaneously the other night, but I came from a world where the job is very structured, and I'm sure you're experiencing that a lot. And you kind of there's a short-term, mid-term, long-term vision. There's goals, there's races, there's teams, and everything is extremely structured toward that goal, that you have that vision for the business. When you start your own business, and particularly to your point, when it's quite new and you don't have a lot of benchmarks, you start really with a blank page. And it's scary. It's extremely scary. I mean, I mentioned jokingly, but it's actually true. I was not sleeping, not because I was anxious or worried. I was extremely excited, but I had no idea where to start. And now, sometimes I step back and I appreciate that I actually know what I'm going to do tomorrow, because I remember those days where I was like, what do I do tomorrow? How do I start? And it's a story of resilience too, because to your point, photography is not well understood in the US, and fashion photography is a sub-segment that is even less understood. So that's a first obstacle where you're like, okay, I don't know what it is, I don't know if I'm going to trust it. First obstacle. Second obstacle, I was looking for a serious printer, a serious framer, because I wanted to make no compromise. And I remember I went to the big ones, and they kind of looked down at me like, who are you? We're working with the museums already. No, thank you, kind of. Luckily, I was speaking about the story of you do the first step, it's very difficult. You do the second step, it's very difficult. And then the third step, somebody helps you. I had a friend from work, a very close friend of mine, who said, you might want to meet with that woman. And when I met her, I didn't, I was like, I don't know why I'm meeting her, but great, I'm going with the flow, and that's part of the, doing new things, you need to go with the flow. And she said, well, actually, Picto, which, in France, we all know Picto. Picto is a lab that was founded in 1950 and is, with Cartier-Bresson, so obviously a very serious lab. They were opening in New York. And she said, you might want to speak to them. And that was amazing, because they were installed earlier than I opened the gallery, but still very new. And so we kind of were scrapbooking together and trying things, and they would help me a lot, looking at the files, are they high-res enough for that format, many technical things that I didn't know. So that was, really, I'm always grateful for that encounter, and the fact that I had the chance to work with Picto. And then the last thing that was an obstacle was two other things. One was I'm not coming from the art world, and I always felt very self-aware that I didn't train, I didn't learn art history. Since then, it's been 8 years, and I read so much that I think now I've caught up, but not fully. I will never. It's a life journey, right? And then the last thing was to say, because so I didn't come from the world with the credentials, so that didn't help. And then the last thing I would say I had always that vision that fashion photography was never precious. It was meant to be read at the nail salon, and for me, I wanted to respect that, because that's part of the vision, was to be show-stopping, to be inspiring for everyone. And so what I wanted to be online. And we're speaking pre-pandemic. And I remember, I mean, I don't want to say, but there's an art fair opening very soon in New York, and until recently, and I don't know if they changed their rules, but you had to have a physical space for 5 years in order to be part of the collective.
Wow.
And so I never joined, and I mean, it's okay, but I you know, for me that's a very traditional way of looking at things.
Right.
Luckily, I'm growing despite not being part of that organization, but that was a headwind as well because I was not taken seriously by anyone at the beginning.
Sure.
And even to find the artist, you know, it's like a restaurant. When it's empty,
Yeah.
nobody wants to come in. So I had to leverage my friendships. I had worked with many of the photographers, and many knew me well enough to say, we trust you, do whatever you want with our images.
Amazing.
And that's how I started. Plus a beautiful other encounter with Trunk Archive, Leslie's image.
Yeah.
And she helped me a lot.
Really? That's great.
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
that's how we started.
And Trunk Archive, for people who don't know, is you can license fashion images, portraits from well-known photographers around the world.
Exactly.
It's a well-known archive in our industry.
Yeah, and so she's connected to so many fantastic photographers.
sure.
So she opened so many doors.
Amazing. Yeah, I like the idea of overcoming not being an expert. We talk about you have to know what you do deeply, right? You can't just do whatever you want, but it was the same when I opened the gallery. I went to a well-known gallery in town and said, I'm opening a gallery, and the girl said, you can't do that. You don't have an art history degree. You've never worked as a director. And I said, it's open. She's like, how did you do that? I'm like, that's not fair. I've been waiting for years. But you can also wait for years and be stuck in a position. So kudos to you for taking the plunge, because New York offers possibilities, but it's not an easy place either.
No, it's not, but I have to say, I think I would never be where I am if I was not in New York. I find because it's so hard, people help each other
They do.
very much, and I would I'm so grateful for everyone who I met on the way, and that's why we host the events that we host today. It's to help the ecosystem of you never know on which scale and which level of life people are going to connect. Sometimes, I mean, when we met Derrick, I mentioned that I knew you were a co-author with Thomas, and I had met Thomas earlier, but I didn't understand that you were in tech. And then once I discovered that, obviously now there's other levels of connection. My son is attending the school you attended. Which is crazy, and I'm sure there's so many layers that we had no idea. So that's for me the beauty of mixing people together in a curated way. I mean, you've seen it when we were together.
Which is essential, right?
Yeah, we curate so that we know that people are going to have a good time and they're going to enjoy knowing each other. So that's how we do it. But that's the beauty of New York, is that people are curious. They're hungry. They need to. You need to go. It's difficult in New York, but therefore it makes people better, I think.
I agree.
Let me ask you
Yeah,
two questions. Well, short question and maybe a slightly longer one. So you have these beautiful pictures, and then for my audience, the tech people on the West Coast, who are potential people who would love to have this kind of work in their homes, in their offices, because it's spectacular, some of these pictures. So the shorter question is, how would they get access to it? How would they find it?
Thank you for the question, appreciate. So easy, because I mentioned online, wherever you are, in the US, but also abroad. We work abroad internationally as well. You go to theselectsgallery.com, so I'm going to spell it because of my accent. THE, the Selects, so SELECTS, there's a S and then gallery, as gallery in English, .com. And you can find, our work. So it's all coming from very established photographers. It's limited edition. It comes with a certificate of authenticity, and you can find the size, you can find the framing that you want, and then you have the price. It's very transparent, quite hopefully easy. And if not, let us know. We'll improve the
Yeah.
UX with pleasure.
Well, the one thing I will say is, because you said about the galleries and the art fair in New York needing a premise, I can tell you most of the people I know are all online. So they will love the fact that the Selects Gallery is online. So that was the first question. Second one, because you're very humble, I think, in the way you described your transition. But in the book, one of the things we talk about, the whole premise of the book is that people they want to make a change. So they're doing one thing, something happens, or they're thinking about it differently, they want to make a change, and it's difficult because they have lots of things going on in their head about why they shouldn't change. You make it seem easy now looking back. You talk about some of the challenges, but I'm curious, you're doing you've moved Europe to New York, you're in marketing, and now you own a gallery. There's no reason, on the surface you could probably stitch together that, marketing and running a gallery, I can see some connection, but I'm just curious about a few things. Was it overnight that you were marketing and then you said, oh, next week I'm going to switch into gallery? Was it something that took a couple of years to think about? And then, depending on the answer, if it was longer, what did you, like, we talk about blind spots in the book, some of the things that hold you back. You're like, I want to do this, but can I? I'm not an artist. I didn't study art history. You're telling yourself all the reasons. So I'd love to know, was it quick? Was it slow? And what were the things that were holding you back?
Yeah, thank you. So it was slow. It took me 20 years to launch the gallery. I had the idea so luckily when I was at L'Oréal, almost not first day literally, but very early on I was on set. And I enjoyed it so much. So that was a ha-ha moment for me early on in my career. And I had that love, I don't know how to say differently, I was so inspired that I really wanted to help, those artists and be connected to them.
This is back in France.
This is back in France, absolutely. What I didn't mention, I actually lived in Colombia as well when Bogota was not a safe place. So, and I actually created a guide of Bogota that is still being published today. But anyway, so I've learned through. Initially, we went to Colombia because of my husband's job. So I was not working, and I'm super active, so I was extremely bored. So I learned Spanish first and foremost, and then I created the guide. And then that kind of helped me to discover that maybe I was able to do something else than just my job. So it kind of opened, I think it happened iteratively. And then moved to New York, did my job, left L'Oréal, who was I stayed at L'Oréal for 14 years, so that was a very important company in my life. And I left because they implemented a 12 months non-compete, and it felt not right at this stage in my career to sign it. So I kind of, from one day to the other, I was without a job because I didn't sign. And so it's kind of like those moments, and it happened in Colombia, where I was like, okay, what do I do now? And
so
then
you
have to. Now I'm in New York. It's February, so as you know, the best months of the year in New York. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? And I said, I always wanted to work in the gallery. I'm going to do a certificate in art business at NYU and learn. A, I'm going to be busy. B, I'm going to reopen my kind of chakras or whatever, and just reconnect to this idea. I didn't launch the gallery at the time because I didn't feel ready, and time would tell that I was right. So then I went back to a job, and luckily I was hired by Coach, and I joined Coach. I worked for them for 5 years. Amazing experience, amazing. But the story is that I was in marketing, managing the media budget when the world changed completely from print to digital. And I was like, oh my, the world of fashion photography as we know it is going to change completely. That kind of pushed the urge to launch the gallery even further. And then, long story short, a lot of reorgs, a lot of changes at Coach at the time. And I had the opportunity to go to Asia, and I had to decide what I wanted to do. And I remember the promise I had done to myself 5 years earlier, that I would one day launch the gallery. And it felt for me that, A, from an age point of view, B, also from comfort point of view, I needed to be careful because the more you make, the more liability you create for yourself.
Absolutely.
And then you never can launch something entrepreneurial because you have like the mortgages, the blah blah blah, the blah blah blah, and I was like, I need to do it now. And so I launched the gallery when I left Coach, but just to be clear, I'm not defining myself either or. Actually, when I launched the gallery, I was doing board work, I was doing some consulting. Then I went back to the corporate world. I was at Coty, I was the president of a branch called Philosophy. Then I became the CEO of a jewelry company, and I continued to manage the gallery. So, and then when, there's moments where I'm like 100% dedicated to the gallery, and I take those moments to really push the gallery to the next level. And then I go back to corporate, because I like it actually. I'm not either or.
Mm-hmm.
And I do it and I make more money clearly, so that helps. And I can hire maybe people who are going to execute actually much better than I would do. Some of the things that I've laid the ground for, but they're going to do better. So for me, I see those moments are like, it's kind of a continuity, but with a lot of like this. Mm-hmm. If you look from far, it looks like, okay, this is what we were, 8 years ago, this is where we are, amazing. But if you look behind the curtain, you see a lot of like back and forth. Yeah. And I continue to do that, and I love it, and I've learned to manage it. It's when I have two jobs. I mean, I don't manage the gallery directly when I have a regular job. Obviously, I can't, but I'm still involved. It's a lot, I won't lie. But I also know that there's moments where I won't, and it works, somewhat. I try. I have a very understanding husband, too.
Yeah, we all need that. To do this. But that's great. So, because you mentioned a few things, which particularly we have this idea of the crossover, which is, you can take some of the things. Like, I love the fact that you start the gallery, you're delegating, which obviously you got from your leadership roles at L'Oreal or Coach, where you can pick the people who can do the job best. And for a lot of our readers, they think if they were to go from marketing to running a gallery, they go back to zero. Yeah. And they have to learn everything. No. I love the fact that you have to learn art history, learn how to do this thing, but delegate all the things that you don't need to learn, running the store.
And honestly, I mean, particularly in the digital world, you have younger profiles who are so much more savvy and fast that, like, why would I, take forever to upload a new exhibition when they can do that in 5 minutes?
Exactly.
And as soon AI is going to help us with that.
Even better.
I'm like learning agents, and I'm training Claude like crazy.
Excellent.
That's great. No. So I'm thinking the same thing in a lot of trades, which we talk about. Everything's a trade, right? Mm-hmm. You give up this to try that. Yeah. You have to take a risk. You're not sure, but you get that feeling or that need inside you to make a change, and you have to follow it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I guess, what has always driven me in life is, my motto is no regrets. So every time I feel that if I don't do something, I'm going to regret it. It's kind of like my filter through which I evaluate everything. So I'm like, sometimes I test, I say no, and then I can see like some agitation inside. I'm like, I'm going to regret it. Okay, I'm saying yes. Yeah. Or vice versa, So I knew that if I didn't launch the gallery, I would regret it. And for me, regrets are too heavy to carry.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm like, I can't. Like, it's going to be too heavy. It's going to drive me down.
Can I ask you a personal question about that? So, so in your story, so you had a moment when you had a choice: go to Coach or launch the gallery. You kind of had an idea you wanted the gallery.
Yeah.
Do you regret that the choice you made then? Because that's a big choice.
That was a big choice. I mean, luckily, I have strong intuitions. Yeah. And my husband is like, I've learned to respect them. They seem very irrational. Yeah. He's very rational. Yeah. But he's learned to trust them too. Yeah. And so at the time, my instinct was saying, wait.
Okay.
I can't tell you much more than that. And so I said, okay, it's a great job. it was a very long interview process. I was very impressed by the people. I could tell I would learn a lot.
Okay, yeah.
Like, Coach is one of the first companies to have been extremely digital savvy early on, very omni-channel, very data-driven, very CRM, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to learn so much.
Yeah.
So
Great.
I was like, okay, I'm going to learn. But at one point, I need to keep in mind that I postponed. So I need to do it one day. And that's why
very
5 years late. So it was just a postponing. And then when I saw that, and the story as well was, we were joking about the empty restaurant. Well, if there's no one. So at the beginning, the change of the gallery was also to find the right artists. And some of them I knew, so they said, I'm going to follow you, I trust you, do whatever you want with my images. But others would be like, who are you? Show me your gallery, I'll come back once I see what you've done. Makes sense? And so what happened, and I felt a lot of resistance from the artists that first time. And then what happened is because of the change from print to digital, suddenly many of them were out of a job. Let's be clear. Yeah. So they had to pivot too. And so suddenly the idea of selling their images as art, they were more open to it because, it takes time. So you need to go back to your archive. You need to make sure you have the right scan if it's from, film, etc. So you need. There's some work involved in preparing for curation, storytelling, finding when was it shot, for which magazine, for which brand. I mean, there's history that needs to be brought. And so I think when they were extremely busy shooting, they would never have had the availability. So that's when I saw like, okay, I think the opportunity is opening again because print is disappearing. They are going to have more time and more availability is also in terms of their mindset to try something new because they kind of have less choice.
Yeah.
So no, I have no regret because that was. Seems like looking back that it was almost meant to be.
Yeah, no, I love how intentional you are thinking about it. That's great because a lot of people will jump into the thing that seems like the right thing to do and maybe postpone the thing that's more in their heart, the thing they really want to do, and they just keep putting it off to someday, which we talk about, that someday is not a real day. Yeah. It's just, down the road.
I mean, it's not easy. Yeah. I'm lucky as well. I'm aware I have, a supportive husband. I live in a fantastic city where, everybody is doing one or two things anywhere, so it doesn't sound awkward. It's not easy for everyone to do it, so I want to acknowledge that it's not.
I will just having learned about this week, I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just love it. And so we talked about how people would buy. How do you select artists? How do people,
Yeah, so it started really word of mouth, as I said. So a set of my own connections. I mentioned, Leslie, and there's a few others who helped me be connected to the right artist first, but then I always curate. So there's a lot of consistency in the gallery. It's my eye. So like it or not, and it's my eye is, I think, a mix of, as everything I said, growing up in Europe and in Paris in particular, I think I trained my eye unconsciously. I remember what's his name, W. Hunt, from the Unseen Eye. Mm-hmm. He was one of our teachers at NYU, I know, I'm lucky. I've been extremely lucky in some of the encounters, and I was lucky to meet Thomas too, and very impressed when I met you.
Thomas and I don't really believe in luck. We believe you make your own luck. We talk about this a lot, really, and so you seem like a person who has made your own luck in some ways. You've put yourself out there.
Maybe.
You haven't sat back. But you chase it, which is great. I admire that.
So he pushed us to go to iPad and select some pieces that we thought would be interesting. And then he didn't ask everybody, and I was not asked. But then he said, "Okay, this is my selection," and virtually we had the same selection.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like,
amazing.
Okay, maybe I've got something.
Something here. This is good. It's great.
So I felt very reassured because I was lacking a lot of self-confidence in the process. So yeah, so you are asking
how you select your artists.
Oh yeah, so it's really trusting again my instinct, my eye, but also researching a lot. So it's always that mix of logic and magic that I think is very powerful, and so I try to understand. I spend a lot of time with the artists, listening to them, their life, their vision, and most of the time it's not super defined. They're like, I like to shoot like this, and it makes sense because it's very intuitive. So it's not a criticism on my part. It's just artists have kind of burst of inspiration and they don't rationalize it.
Sure.
That's somebody else's job to do that. So. But for me, I love to do that, to understand, okay, why, what makes you want this, what's your inspiration, and then I kind of like look at where did they live at that time. So we have one photographer, for example, that I'm very proud we have on the gallery. His name is Chris van Wangenheim. We spoke about him. He was as big as Helmut Newton and Guy Bourdin, as big. They were called the Terrible Threes. Very daring, very provocative. And when you understand his story, he grew up, I don't know even how to say the country, because that's one part of the world in Europe that changed hands a lot during the world wars. And so there was Prussia, there was Germany, there was Austria, and he grew up with Nazism. And his father was an athlete. He went to the Olympic Games through Nazism. Their relationship with Nazism is not clear. I have no idea. What we know is that the father died in prison, so it's unclear. But he left the country, went to New York, most probably hoping for another new birth, etc. And then he comes to New York in the 70s. And it's dangerous.
Sure.
And there's a lot of violence.
Yeah.
And so for him, he said, there's so much violence in the society, I'm going to show it.
Yeah.
But then I'm going to show it in a way that makes it extremely seductive. And so his images are extremely powerful, daring, extremely elegant, because he was an aristocrat. So he has that innate elegance that makes the images acceptable and very seductive. So it's kind of like that sense of danger that we are all attracted by.
Sure.
But because it's so glamorous and so like the images are extremely well composed, the lighting, everything is so elegant that it makes it acceptable. But again, if you don't understand his story, you don't understand why he was so provocative. And he was very close to Helmut Newton, actually. They were really good friends, and the daughter of Chris van Wangenheim's godfather was Helmut Newton. So they were like, some people were saying that he was kind of like the spiritual son of Helmut Newton.
Yeah.
But so understand, and obviously they had that German connection and that daring style. But again, and then you look at some of his images, and you feel like they were shot in Studio 54. Yet they were 5 years earlier than Studio 54. So they are almost like a sense of like anticipation.
Yeah, sure.
So, that's the kind of work that we do as well, is like and there's not that much information about Chris van Wangenheim, so we interview people, for example. So Sandy Linter, who is an amazing makeup artist, has been really great, graceful to help us. And she corrects also sometimes when we are not sure, and she said, no, this is the model's names, this is that year, this is the story.
That's great.
Obviously one of his key models was Gia Karenji, so obviously Sandy was very close to Gia, so a lot of layers. And another thing that I didn't say, on the selectsgallery.com, so our website, you can find a lot of interviews of the photographers.
Oh, even better. Yeah.
And they're on YouTube as well. And again, same logic as what you're doing right now, sharing the information, making it accessible. So if you're interested by a work, you can go and learn about the vision of the photographer, what's the context, why did they do what they did. So we try to be educational as well, and educational for the sake of embarking everybody in the knowledge.
It's interesting because people imagine a photographer or somebody creative is just going to be a risk taker, right?
Yeah.
But when they get to that point in their career, I find many creatives, when there's a change, societal, technological, they really don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And the change from print to digital, or the introduction of AI or other things, I think just stops creatives in their tracks. And you'd like to believe they just adjust. You find that? I mean, they need a little help sometimes.
I think it's as everything in life. There are some who are gonna get stuck. Some who are like Robert Farber, for example. I would not say stuck. I would say intentional about keeping a certain type of technique. So for him, like he worked with, and I'm gonna mix up the brands, but he works with Agfa, and then Kodachrome came, I think, and the process, the improvements in filmmaking was making the colors brighter and the definition higher, the image is sharper, and he didn't want that. Because his style was painterly, he wanted to be a painter, and so he actually refused the new films.
Right.
He didn't want to work with them because that was not his vision.
Right.
And so, you know, you have groups like that who are intentional about it, some who are very nostalgic and stuck in the past, and some who are like, bring it to me, I'm going to try.
Right.
I think as everything in life, I don't know, I've seen different approaches. What fascinates me is actually the connection between photography and technology always.
Yeah, I agree.
Like from, you know, almost a carton box to, you know, like every time there's progress, there's a new wave of cameras and therefore images. It makes the photography so connected to society in a way. I mean, from a technological point of view, and then obviously photography is here to show the unseen, right? That's what.
But partly, I love this. We talked about this picture, but this presentation is not what came out, the Polaroid that came out of the camera.
No.
It's got the age, which we talked about the time. It's got the printing process. It's fascinating. That's not what came out of the camera.
No.
And so this presentation of this picture elevates it, in my mind, from the Polaroid, which is fantastic. Just that starting point, the composition, the story. I'm still fascinated by what they're looking at. But the way you've presented it and printed it is phenomenal.
And that's not me, to be clear. That's really Robert, so the artist. Yeah. You know, he trained as a classical photographer, being in the dark room, so he loves the chemical aspect of photography. So that's why we, you know, with his wet series, the transformation through water, he loves it. And so in the case of, you know, the Polaroids, this idea of replicating the effect of like when the chemical develops at, you know, outside, you know, on when we were all doing this, right? To dry it and let it develop. That process, he kind of replicated it through the mounting, where it's dye sublimation infusion, where the ink is going into the metal, which is that process where kind of in the past where the ink was revealing itself once we removed the, you know, the cover, right?
It was great.
And so he kind of found a way to be almost true to the original process with a modern process. At larger scale, obviously, which I find that's the creativity also of the artist. Some are not interested in the printing and framing. Some are very interested. Again,
well, I
so
know,
much diversity.
I know my tech
of
audience will be very interested in this because of the technology, in particular the printing process. So just you know, it's available for sale, I think.
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
And you talked about, you know, the era it's taken and how it connects to society and technology, but also fashion, right? Whether you're looking at paintings or you're looking at whatever, it's really, we define ourselves through fashion so often, and it's so dismissed.
Completely.
Right? And the images that these image makers make are representations of eras. You know, if you ask somebody to think of the 60s, the clothes come to mind. Even the early 90s, early hip hop, clothes come to mind, right? I mean, always. And I think we dismiss that. But there's a value proposition to this in terms of fashion and culture and society that I think is often ignored or misunderstood until it's explained.
Yeah, and it's so linked to society, right? When you had the corset and then suddenly no corset. I mean, obviously I'm stating the obvious in terms of the trends, but you know, a designer, a fashion designer, and therefore a fashion photographer as well, they have a very keen and deep understanding of society, and even are able to anticipate what's coming.
Right.
And they create. This is why sometimes when you see a couture show, you are like, this is like so out there.
Yeah.
But this is pure creativity,
Yeah.
and I think suddenly, you know, museums like even FIT, Met Museum, etc., they're starting to understand it. But to your point, you know, I went to an exhibition of Sargent, and it looks like fashion photography in painting.
Right.
It's just at the time that I was painting that there was no photography anyway, or maybe it was, and it was early on. Like, but so it has always been there.
Yeah.
Always.
Can I bring you back to something I think our audience just on the book will be interested in is a lot of people, you talked about when you moved into the gallery, a lot of people would think when they do something like that, before they do it, they have to have the space, the artists, the customers, a set of, they have to have everything in place before they open the door.
Yeah.
But the way you described it, you said you started, you took the first step, and we talked about that in chapter 8, is just take the first step.
Yeah.
You don't have to have everything in place. Is that how?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had no choice, because when I work, like in the corporate world, I work a lot.
Yeah.
So I almost have no mental space. I mean, I'm a mom too, I'm a wife, so I'm like already full. And so I can't, now I have the capability because the gallery exists, but when it didn't exist, I had no mental space to think about something so invisible, you know, like out there, right? And so, I had to, I think I mentioned that when we spoke the other day, but my husband rationally, he would say to me, do a business plan. And then you'll see if it makes sense for you to launch the gallery. And I was like, I can't. I have no idea how much it costs to print, how much I can sell for, what's the cost of framing, what's the shipping, how much even commission I should give to the artist. I had no idea, so I was like, I can't. And I didn't have the mental space to do it. So life kind of pushed me into moments where I had to plunge from zero to like go anywhere, because I didn't have the time nor the mental space to start.
What was the first thing you did? Do you remember?
I think I went to the printing and framing, and they disregarded me. Yeah. And so I was not a very enjoyable experience.
But you got rejected in that first step. Yeah. And then how did you feel?
Not super good. I said like I was not sleeping because I was like,
that's horrible.
Where do I start? What do I do? What do I do? I mean, as I said, I had done the certificate in art business, so they had made us like start to create a business plan 5 years earlier. So I had kind of like, you know, that tale where you leave little stones on the road. If you need to come back, you can find the road again. Great. I think I did that step by step, and then when I had to do the big plunge, I could go back to those things a little bit. And then honestly, that's an advice that I had early on, which is don't be worried that somebody is going to steal your ID. Most people are too busy to steal your IDs anyway. They can't do it. So just share, tell people what you need, and in 99% of the cases, people are going to help you. Yeah. So that's kind of like, then I was like, okay, I'm going to go and say, this is my project.
That's great.
I have no credibility. I don't know what I'm speaking about.
No, in fact, one of the things for the audience, we met a number of people around you on Tuesday evening, and that was the one thing they said. They said a lot of nice things about you, but the thing I heard the most was that you're very generous with your ideas, with your contacts. You share, which is unusual.
I don't know if it's unusual. It's my way to give back. Right. It's circular, so it can be one-to-one. Some people gave to me, and I never gave back to them. But I believe in that circular aspect, so I I will never forget. I mean, for me, being an entrepreneur as I was never upset against humanity, but now I'm grateful, like authentically grateful, like to the people who help. And even like today, I mean, honestly, I'm grateful for this moment together. We met with Thomas. I was so impressed by Thomas. He's very impressive. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm going to meet. And I was so happy and excited.
It was a great conversation, great day.
Yeah, because you're very humble. Speaking of, humility, we have the master of humility on my left. But so we met and I was so grateful. And then you embraced and you helped me. And then, I wanted to give back the way I could. And we did this event together. And it seems that you enjoyed it. So
that was great. Terrific.
And now we're here together. And it's most probably many other things that are going to unfold from it, and that's what life is about, I think.
Yeah. Well, to wrap it up, we talked about everything leads to designing your life, short-term and long-term summers or goals, and it seems like you had a vision that you kept adjusting to reach. You did kind of design a lifestyle and a life that you wanted to live, right? From the things you loved.
Yeah. I wanted to be surrounded. I have a deep respect for artists, and I think they feed me on a level that I can't really measure. But when I spend time, you're gonna have made my week, honestly, and more.
Vice versa.
And thank you. And every time I spend time with, I call them my artists. They're not mine, but it makes me so happy. And so that's kind of like, to your point, designing something that fulfills you, I guess. Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a. I know you don't believe in chance, but I feel very lucky to be able to have those moments. And even when I go back, it's important to me to say it's not always mutually exclusive. So I go back to corporate, and I love it. But, corporate, sometimes you know that really well. You need to do a lot of compromise on things.
Sure.
You have to focus on the greater good, always. The organization before the individual, in a way. I mean, you need to push your individuality, but it's the greater good. And sometimes that pushes you to do things that you don't agree with, honestly. And when I was young, it would kind of drain me so much. I was so upset. I was so emotional. And now I'm like, when I'm very upset, I go back to curating. And I'm like, I come back on Monday and I'm like, chill. It's fine.
That's good.
It's all good. It's for the greater good. Yeah. It gives me a perspective. It gives me mental freedom. Because that's a space where I don't compromise with anything. Like when you are asking me about curation, I curate.
Yeah,
like I don't ask anybody's opinion. Sometimes if I hesitate, but it's rarely so. And so it's kind of like selfishly my space of freedom. So therefore I'm more open to compromise on some other things because less is at stake. And therefore I can be more grounded and most probably more rational and better in my corporate job now that I have the gallery. I feel it. I'm much more mature, grounded, And so I'm saying that as well as an example of like it's not, sometimes you have that feeling that you need to do the big jump and that's it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, life is not always linear. And for me, I see, I monitor the market in a way, and one day I know the market will be ready for me to be full-time on the gallery. But until it's not, sometimes I go back and I enjoy it, so I'm lucky. And it helps me financially because, I don't make any compromise on the gallery. And that financial freedom that the jobs give me enable me to do like a pure gallery, like no compromise on anything. So it's a very long-term, goal that I have. And it's going to take a lifetime most probably, and that's okay.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
and it does give you that balance and peace of mind. That's priceless.
Yeah.
All by itself.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
This was delightful.
Thank you so
Again.
much. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Visit theselectsgallery.com. Look at Robert's work and a number of others. We have articles coming out in Urk Magazine Paris. and 3 of your artists.
Yeah, yeah.
One will be out in print in a couple of weeks, actually, I believe, and it'll be online. And the other 2 will be out over the next, I think, 6 months or 9 months, right? So keep your eyes open, enjoy, take advantage of learning about slugs before your friends, because, you know, there aren't
limited edition.
That's
It
what I was
is
just going to
beautiful.
say. Those aren't limited. So
And very
Once it's
limited.
gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
that's right. Thank you.
Thank you.